There have been so many musicians who left this world too soon, but left behind an impact, ones that are studied and their lives celebrated. However, there are so many that are overlooked. When music stars stand up and speak for breast cancer, they are following in the footsteps of Minnie Riperton. Minnie began her career singing backup for such legends as Etta James, Chuck Berry, and Muddy Waters. She would later reach gold status with her solo album, Perfect Angel. The last single from that album, Loving You, even made it to #1. Unfortunately, her career was cut short by breast cancer. After finding out she was hit with this horrible disease, she continued to tour, but most importantly, she became a spokesperson for breast cancer of black women, with interviews, television commercials and a Tonight Show appearance on August 24, 1976, with guest host Flip Wilson. She was very open about her cancer. At the time, this wasn't an everyday thing. In return for her services as the first black national spokesperson, President Jimmy Carter presented her with the American Cancer Society Courage Award. Despite putting up an honorable fight, the cancer spread and she passed away on July 12 of 1979. She was in her husband's arms and listening to a song that Stevie Wonder had recorded for her. Following her death, husband Richard Rudolph founded the Minnie Riperton Fund in her honor, which has since brought in over $1 million towards breast cancer research. Alan Jackson Jr., the world's greatest soul and R&B drummer, there are very few quote-unquote black classic songs from 1965 through 1975 that Al didn't provide the beat. Some of the bigger names he's played for include Al Green, Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Aretha Franklin, Sam and Dave, Albert King, Tina Turner, Bill Withers, and white artists like Eric Clapton. When one looks at the evolution of the music industry, Stax Records is one of the cornerstones. A place where soul and blues music could get a studio that recorded what they wanted to play, but more importantly, race didn't play a factor in the music. The MGs, including Alan, were a group of session musicians that did the music for most of the artists that came through the studio. One of the things that made him stand out from other drummers is how small his drum kit was. Usually one bass drum, one rack and two rack toms, and two 18-inch cymbals. Fellow Booker T and the MG's members commented that he could easily sit in on anything being played, and he could quickly fit the appropriate groove. He's a drummer that most fans don't know of, but musicians feel his influence, cementing him to newer generations with articles in today's music magazines like Modern Drummer and Drummer World. Unfortunately, in 1975, he was killed by an unknown shooter, allegedly the boyfriend of his soon-to-be divorced wife. Johnny Ace would gain his fame with malt shop favorites such as My Song, The Clock, and Pledging My Love. Johnny was the first music artist to have a rhythm and blues song score big on the Billboard charts. In fact, he was the first R&B artist to win Billboard's Triple Crown, meaning a song was #1 in its genre, most plays on jukeboxes, and most singles sold in stores, but he ultimately will have the What Could Have Been tag attached to his name. His life was cut short from an accident that was totally his fault. As a joke, he would often fire off his .32 caliber revolver. All these poor road signs across the country had bullet holes thanks to him. On December 25, 1954, he was performing at the City Auditorium in Houston, Texas. Big Mama Thornton's bass player told the story that while backstage, Johnny held his gun to his head, thinking it was empty. He fired the weapon, and died as a result. Often referred to as rock's first casualty, he really was a bridge between white and black music. White musicians the likes of Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, Elvis Presley, Joan Baez, and David Allan Coe cite him to be an influence on them. Klaus Sperber, aka Klaus Nomi, was a German-born countertenor. Klaus is someone who would be on the same page with such performance artists as David Bowie, but Klaus came and went in a flash. He was able to mix opera, shock rock, synth pop, and avant-garde in a musical situation that still leaves his fans in awe. His music would fit in the opera section or the new wave section of record stores. But his unique look and persona would have the longest surviving effect on the world. His impact is still felt today. as the likes of Lady Gaga channel him as an inspiration. Also, the fashion world often recites his name. Such fashion experts as Jean-Paul Gaultier keeps Nomi's name rotating in that circle. Klaus was clearly going bald, however. He used hairstyles that would use his receding hairline for effect. He gained a following and had the potential to grow in whatever direction he wanted to go. However, he would be one of the first celebrities to die of a new disease called AIDS. As the disease progressed, outbreaks of Kaposi's sarcoma began to show on his neck, so he incorporated a Baroque period outfit with a full collar that would cover those sores. Klaus passed away on August 6, 1983, at the Sloan Kettering Hospital Center in New York. Bert Berns has been nicknamed the man behind 51 pop hits. Bert is one of the most overlooked songwriters and producers of all time. His name goes under the radar, but Sir Paul McCartney himself has said that Bert's name should be elevated to its rightful place. After a bout with rheumatic fever, he was plagued with heart problems, so his life was all but certain to be short, but he filled it with a long-lasting legacy. His first career was that of a mambo dancer. He would learn to play a variety of instruments. Based on a $50 a week salary, Bert began his career writing for Robert Mellon Music. He would pen such timeless classics as Twist and Shout for the Isley Brothers, which was also a hit for the Beatles, Solomon Burke's Cry to Me, Cry Baby and Piece of My Heart, which Janis Joplin had huge hits with. Rolling Stone magazine placed him as number 64 on the 100 greatest songwriters of all time. Eventually, he earned his way up to being a stock producer for Atlantic Records, where he continued to write and produce hits for the likes of Benny King, the Rolling Stones, Wilson Pickett, and the Drifters. With the rise of British bands recording his songs, he found his services were needed in London. Being the first American producer to work in England, after a few years with Atlantic Records, he formed his own record company, Bang Records. Using his talents for the likes of Van Morrison and Neil Diamond. His biggest connection to the history of music was that he introduced Jimmy Page to Atlantic Records. Bert died of heart failure on December 30, 1967.